just finding those ways that we can disconnect from the habits and the routines and the rituals that have become such a common part of our lives. That's when we get inspired, and that's when we get creative and we have ideas. And that's why people come away with these ideas when they're doing something mundane like showering or doing dishes or gardening or walking.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Mortgage Influencers, where we bring you professionals who share insight into the latest trends, tips, industry technology, and services to help you be a mortgage influencer in your mortgage business.
Ginger with the zinger. All right, girl. All right, girlfriend.
Wait till I see you in Puerto Rico.
Oh, not going. And I'll tell you why offline.
Okay, good enough.
Yeah.
Hey, welcome to another episode of Mortgage Influencers. My name is Ginger Bell, and I have with us our other host today, Frank Garay, in Northern California.
That's right.
Schang
Get it right.
Coming from Denver, Colorado. Today I'm in Atlanta, Georgia, on the other side. And we have a special guest today who I'm very excited to have you meet. And that is Blaine Rada, who is the National Sales Trainer. See, I messed it up already.
Director.
Instructional design. We went through this whole list.
Designer.
But I did call him. I say I'm a huge fan, and he's with RHMI. Thank you. And I've known Blaine for years, but I'm excited to have him here to talk about really what he does to have an influence. And I'm going to start off, and then I'm going to ask you a question, because I actually brought your book from Sore Souls to a Soaring Soul with me, and it's been my little reading companion on my travels to Atlanta. So thank you for that. But I love this quote. It is, "The real voyage of discovery consists not in seeking new landscapes, but in having new eyes." And I found that really so insightful for a lot of what's happening in the industry right now, right?
Yeah.
But really just, kind of how it segues into everything you did about this book. So thank you for joining us, and let's dive right in.
Yeah, glad to be with you guys.
Cool. So let's hear about that book. I love that quote, by the way. Yeah, that's really, really cool.
So the book was not a planned event. I mean, I for many years I have thought, boy, I should write a book, and I didn't know if it should be a business book or just a book reflecting on personal experiences, which frankly, other than my family, who'd really be all that interested in that. But in 2018, I took a month off to disconnect from my life and travel to a foreign land where I hardly spoke the language, and walked 500 miles across Spain. And it's actually a thing that millions of people have done for over 1,000 years, called the Camino de Santiago. And what inspired me to do it was a movie that I'd seen starring Martin Sheen, I want to say maybe it wouldn't have been 20 years ago, maybe 10 years ago. And it's called The Way. And it features this journey in that movie. And when I saw it, it was just one of those things that I said at the time, I will do that. And I didn't know when or how or why, but I knew I would do it. And in 2018, I did it. And when I came home and was kind of processing the journey, and I had photos, and I had, selfie videos that I had taken recording my thoughts and reflections, and I had notes that I had made. And I was going to put together basically a summary of my trip for family and friends that might be interested in knowing more about it. And as I got into the writing of it, I realized this is kind of the biggest writing I've ever done in terms of the length and the breadth of the writing. And I had always wanted to experience that journey, the journey of becoming an author. And so I thought, well, why not? Why not take this experience that I've had, write a book about it that would be not only interesting for people who are considering something like the Camino, but also just, a book about life lessons and lessons learned along the way. And so that's what I did. So in 2019, I published the book, and it's really led to tremendous opportunities. I mean, talk about an opportunity to influence by having a book, even though it's not, quote, a business book. I developed a keynote presentation actually while I was on the walk. I had, the ideas coming to me, and I was literally like rehearsing it in my solitude as I was walking, miles and miles every day. And so between a keynote presentation and a book, even though it's not mortgage related, and I speak primarily to mortgage people, it really resonates. And it really is something that people have found to be inspirational, to kind of really cause them to reflect on their life and their work and their business and their careers and their family. And so it's been wonderful for me to be able to kind of continue the journey, because honestly, when you do something like walk 500 miles across a country, it would be really easy to just kind of check that off your list when you're done and get right back into your life as usual and not have it be something that lives on. And so the book and the speaking about it have kept it alive for me, which has had tremendous benefit to me personally, to be able to keep it alive.
I am like so inspired right now. You're fast. I had no idea we were going to talk about this, and this is what this book was about. This is absolutely incredible. It's amazing.
It does. It's an unusual thing, right? So it's not kind of like the normal conversation topic. And I of course could talk about it for hours. So I'm happy to take any questions or anything that you'd like to discuss about it. But obviously, this is your show. So I'm here to speak to whatever you'd like me to talk about.
Okay, and I'm just being funny here, but boy, oh boy, what a great way to lose some weight, right? I mean, trekking 500 miles, that'll trim you up.
I did lose 20 pounds, which I've since, of course, gained entirely back, plus then some. But it's hard to, and it's not like I ate well. I mean, I ate whatever I could eat, so I had a lot of sugar and caffeine and things to kind of
along
keep
the
me
way.
fueled. But it's hard to duplicate walking nine hours a day in your normal life.
Incredible. Let me ask you this. When you did that, is it with a group of people? Are you all in it together kind of a thing? Or are you a solo guy with a map and a booklet on how you get from one place to the other? What was it?
Yeah. So for me, it was solo. I mean, you're interacting with people all day long. I mean, there's times when there's nobody around you, but for the most part, I mean, there are, on any given day, there are hundreds, if not thousands of people who are starting this trek. So
it's not like an annual event. People just
all the time, anytime.
Yeah, I mean, in the wintertime, obviously, because of weather, not a lot of people do it, but certainly every other season, there's tens of thousands of people that do this every year. So you're certainly interacting with people along the way, but I chose to do it by myself. I mean, I had a guidebook and I had everything I needed on my back. There's hostels that you stay at along the way, and it's very well supported. The route that I took is the most common route, and so there's lots of places to stay and eat, and even clinics if you need medical help, and so you never really felt like you were out there by yourself, so to speak. But there was certainly a lot of solitude. There was a lot of hours, to just reflect, and that's really one of the reasons why I did it. Is I wanted to transform. I wanted to come back a better version of myself. And I didn't want it to just be an interesting experience. I wanted it to be a transformative experience. And that's actually a lot of what I speak about, is how do we do that? Not everybody has the ability to take a month off of their life and go walk across a country, nor the interest to do that, frankly. But we all kind of have a desire to transform. I think we all want to be better in various ways along our life's journey. And so what does that entail? How do you do that? And that's some of the stuff that I speak to groups about.
Golly. Well, I'll let you guys ask away. I've got a gazillion questions, but
well, you have to. So I can tell you that it's one of those things. Definitely, Frank, get the book.
I wrote it down for sure.
Because there's so many, and the nuggets, the lessons that you have in here. It's like the chapter. It's not the place, it's the people. In the reflection that comes into that is so insightful. And I mean, honestly, I think we could unpack this in itself and do a lot of different conversations. But what I really want to get into is what you've done, Blaine, is taking a journey of discovery, self-discovery that you created for yourself, and taking a month off. So whether you take a month off or you've had a self-discovery event happen that maybe you hadn't planned on. What you did is you took that and made that into where you could have an influence on others. And I think that's where a lot of people miss that. And you took that extra step of saying, hey, I'm going to take what I learned, I'm going to put it into a book. could be a blog, could be a video, could be whatever. But so many times we think, and you said this, who wants to hear this besides my family? But I mean, a lot of people want to hear this besides your family. I mean, Frank, it's like, I can tell you, Frank is going to call you and he's going to like drill questions, because those are the kind of things. And so, think about, yes, you have an influence. How can you do that? So you wrote the book and now you're doing speaking, which you already had that platform to begin with, obviously being with ArchMI, but others can have that opportunity as well. And so taking that book, I want to talk about your speaking, because you spoke at an event that I spoke at for Akuma, we can never figure out which one it is, the American Credit Union Mortgage Association. Great organization, phenomenal. But you were their keynote, their opening, talking about this, right?
Right.
So what does that look like? I mean, how are you doing? What are you talking about on the sessions that you're doing and speaking?
So aside from the sales and business development stuff that is, has been a steady diet of mine, that's the lane that I carved out for myself, having been in the industry a little over 30 years, probably 15 years or so ago. I decided that I wanted to not talk about operational things in mortgage lending, but really talk about personal skills, social skills, building your business, developing relationships, et cetera. But after having this experience, I was actually scheduled to speak at Arch's national sales meeting, and I was supposed to speak about my salesy stuff. And, because we deliver this information to our customers, but yet I never delivered it to our own employees. And so that was kind of the idea. But then I come back from this journey and I reached out to our, senior leadership and said, I can give the presentation you were expecting, or I can give something that is very different, but I think could be just as impactful. And it was that keynote that I had kind of developed in my head along the journey. And I gave that presentation literally thinking it's one and done. This will be the only time I probably ever talk about this to a group. I had not written the book at that time, and that'll be it. And the response, the impact that it had on the audience was something that I had never experienced, because it affected people so personally. And that's where I think we sometimes get hung up in thinking about, well, how could I possibly influence somebody, because nobody wants to hear about me, right? And that's actually a mistake I think some people who want to be an influencer make, is they make it all about them. But I was clear that even though I was talking about a personal experience, I wasn't there to talk about myself. I was there to talk about things that people could relate to and apply to their own life. And it had such an impact. And then the folks in the audience were saying, we should be taking this out on the road. You should be talking to our customers about this. You should be speaking at conferences. And so it kind of just developed a life on its own. And this was prior to COVID. And even now through COVID and post-COVID, if it's not the most requested topic I speak on, it's often very close to being the most requested topic. So I think even though I speak to business audiences primarily, I think that people like the fact that it's not a business presentation, but yet it has everything to do with being better in business. It has everything to do with increasing sales, if that's how you want to look at it, but it's not about that. It's about something that people take inside, and it's almost impossible to describe it, actually. If a meeting planner were to say to me, what are the takeaways, right? What are the things that people will get from your presentation? I honestly am not sure, because based on how people respond when they come up to me afterwards, they have their own individual experience. And it's almost impossible for me to know how people will take the information and how they'll internalize it. But I think that's really cool. I think it's really cool that I can just, I guess the other thing, and this is something that if you want to be an influence and have an influence, you have to be comfortable with, is to be vulnerable. Right. To not be intimidated or frightened to talk about your failures and talk about your disappointments. And I think people really relate to that, because it's a part of being human. So it's just such a different kind of lane from talking about the businessy stuff. But I found over the last couple of years that they're starting to blend. Right. I'm starting to bring some of the personal journey stuff into the business topics, and I'm bringing the business topics into the personal journey. And it's really just kind of becoming part of my identity, if you will, as someone who's out there sharing ideas.
Yeah.
Can I please go next?
I had to make a comment though, because I do want
All
you to
right.
know, we do have.
And I know I'm wedging you out, Scott. Sorry.
I know, I'm like, I'm
But I
going
want,
further and further down the list.
I just got to ask some things. Go ahead, Ginger. And you go
Okay,
next,
so I
Scott.
just
I'll
want
wait
to
till
know,
last.
and for those of you, it's like, and this is cool about what we're doing is bringing, this information. But Crystal says, I'm not watching on Zoom, but she's on our Facebook Live. And she says, wow, Blaine is an inspiration. And that goes to say that taking that personal story and being able to do that and have that be an inspiration, I'm so glad you've done that. Okay, next. I had to share that, Frank.
Okay, then Scott, you go, because then I'll go.
Okay. I don't know. I have a couple of things here, so I'll try to keep it relatively succinct. I think you said something really, really important there, Blaine, that no, maybe people aren't interested in your life or what you have to say, but people are 100% interested to another human being vulnerable. Mm-hmm. And I think that the act of being vulnerable, because we're humans, we all share these experiences. We have the same fears. We have the same courage at time. We have the same, loss. We have all of these things. And I think one of the things, and this is really, really hard, but I did this myself, something very, very similar to you. You have to create space in your life, right? When you're stuck in the grind and you're on the conveyor belt and all you're doing is you're just going through life with a hammer and you're whacking moles when they pop their head up, you don't have time to create. You don't have that space to create. And the fact that you had this creative flow, that creative flow can be accomplished as easily as just not looking at your phone when you wake up in the morning and journaling for an hour. Like you can create that kind of space in your life. But what I'm taking away from this is just I love the fact that you pushed through this, and even though you had those doubts and you had those should I write this down? That experience made such an impact on you. You almost couldn't not talk about it. Right.
Yeah.
So no, that's a beautiful, beautiful story. And what I'm really pulling out of this is it doesn't matter what you have going on in your life, especially in a market like today, when the opportunity is only what the opportunity is. It's not like we have an opportunity to go out there and grab a bunch of market share. This is a good time to create space and let the creativity flow and look around and maybe dispel of old myths about who you are and what you think you should be doing and how you should be growing your business. But no, this is just really, truly inspirational. And that's an absolutely beautiful story. I love it.
Well, thank you. And it doesn't have to be taking a month off and walking 500 miles, right? That's the journey I took. And that kind of journey works for me. It's the kind of thing that I'm attracted to, the physicality, the endurance, the difficulty. But one of the things
it's burning the ships. Like it's like once you made the decision, there was no going back.
Right. But I don't ever want people to think that that's what they have to do to not only transform themselves, but to kind of tap into this creativity that you're talking about. There's a quote from, I think it's Anne Lamott, and I'm going to not remember it exactly, but something along the lines of, everything tends to work better when it's unplugged for a bit, including us, and I think just finding those ways that we can disconnect from the habits and the routines and the rituals that have become such a common part of our lives, that's when we get inspired, and that's when we get creative and we have ideas. And that's why people come away with these ideas when they're doing something mundane like showering or doing dishes or gardening or walking, because you're kind of removing yourself from the busyness of our normal lives and you're just allowing yourself to have a little space. Yeah.
So this is all just so cool. And a couple quick ones though. This is a little self-serving. Can you condense this down to a 30-minute presentation by chance?
I don't know if I've ever done 30, although I actually, now that I think about it, I think I've done a 30-minute version. It's obvly very condensed.
Good to know.
I
We'll
think
be
I've actually pulled
talking
that off.
soon. Yeah, we'll be talking
Frank
soon.
happens to have a 30-minute slot.
Every Monday through Thursday. What's the title of your keynote? What do you call it? What's the presentation name?
Well, the title is really what Arch came up with, when they decided this was the thing I should do. And I think it's along the lines of journey to success in business and life.
Okay.
All
right.
Yeah. And one thing I really want to highlight too is that Arch, this is something that's obviously very personal and important to me. And yet Arch has given me, because of the platform that I have and because of the trust that they have in me, they've allowed me to speak on this. And the book, by the way, when I wrote the book, it became crystal clear to me that this was not something I should personally profit from. And so any profits that I get from book sales, which honestly, unless you're a famous person, you don't make a lot of money selling books, right? But any profits that I get from book sales, I put into charities that support the Camino. So I try to put it right back into the, that organization.
That is cool.
And that's one of the reasons why I think Arch is supportive of me talking about it, because obviously
you're
if I
not
was
profiting
on stage,
from it. Yeah, you're
selling books. Yeah, that would not be cool.
That's not cool. So here's, and those first two that actually, they're very self-serving on my behalf, but here's what I really want to know. What did you learn about yourself on that journey that surprised you the most?
I think one of the things that it did for me, the only way I can describe it is that it opened my heart. Okay. And I didn't know it was closed. You know what I mean? And I don't mean literally that it was closed, that I was this unfeeling, uncaring person, but I didn't know how much more it could open. Wow. And that was a surprise to me. And it was a beautiful thing. And it was one of the things that I was concerned when I come back and I get back into my normal life. Is it going to close up again? Because I can't duplicate this experience in my regular world. And so I've been very mindful of, okay, maybe it's closed up a little since I've been back, but I'm trying to keep it open. I'm trying to kind of, keep in touch with the emotional way that I was experiencing things, which is not something that's normal for me in my day to day. But yeah, I would say that was the biggest surprise, is just kind of the opening of my heart, the experiencing of things at a very deep emotional level that I was not expecting.
Awesome.
I love it.
Just awesome.
So a couple of things here. What you're talking about, what I think is something to get into, whether it's you're already doing it or maybe in this podcast. I know definitely we have a Mortgage Influencers boot camp, which Scott and I are planning, which will be in May. We'll have information coming soon. We're actually going to be doing a call after this to set it up. But what I would love to see, if you're open to it, Blaine, and if Arch would, be a partner and having you be there, is to do a session. And this is what I'm thinking, to be able to say, okay, from what you had for your experience, and people have experiences in your life, right? How do you take that and turn that into, whether it's a book, whether it's a, podcast, whatever that is, how do you do that to where it can be a part of you and a part of, your word and your message and your marketing and your influence and all those things. So that's really what I'd like to be able to kind of the next step. And I don't know if you do anything like that already for Arch.
I haven't, but that's certainly something that I think is something I could do and something I'd really enjoy thinking through and putting together. There are occasions in a given year when I'm, there's a request for something that would not necessarily be something Arch would support. And generally what I do with those, as long as it's not a conflict of interest, is I just do those on my own time. So we would cross that bridge, as we need to, but one way or the other, as long as I would be available, on the dates that you're putting something together, I'd certainly be interested. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'm in Atlanta, so you know who I'm going to go have a drink with while I'm here, right?
Probably. Yeah.
I'll put a little bug in her ear. So that's good. Okay, so I'll open it up for questions. If anyone wants to post those there, or if you guys have any questions that you want to ask.
So while we're waiting for questions to roll in, Blaine said something and you just said something, Ginger, that kind of connected some dots for me. We used to separate business and personal until the internet. And then social is supposed to be you building that social, that networking, that relationship that's outside of your business, and you tying in your business with your personal life. And I forget what you said, Blaine, but you said something about I forgot what you said about not thinking, but I guess what I'm saying is in the social media world where we're all networked through social media and online and all these communication platforms, it is more important now than ever that we be genuine and that you be authentic and that you show more than your personal side. As soon as you can show your personal side without fear, that encourages other people. What you've tapped into, I think, Blaine, is the power of what today's market is. I mean, we have evolved to this point. You don't separate business and personal anymore. That's why all of these, I mean, look at all the brands. They all have stories. They all have personal stories behind them. They all have Bombas. We donate socks to people that can't afford socks. And so I think this is a really good thing. Yeah, I really hope we can figure out how to get you out there, because I think this kind of mindset, and plus what you did, is so much more spiritually rewarding than closing loans every day. It's okay to grow your soul and your heart and be in business at the same time. And we have an opportunity to do that through content.
Yeah. And my belief is that, that makes you better at closing loans, right?
It absolutely does.
Becoming a better human makes you better at everything that you have in your life. So yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I think that segues right into something I wanted to ask you, exactly what you asked, Scott, and how you answered it, Blaine, is when you got back from that and you entered back into the world of business, right? Is there something you can pinpoint, or there's probably many things, but is there one thing in particular you can pinpoint, like, I'm going to do this part of this differently this time? Or did you know what I'm trying to say? Like, was there something that you changed in how you approach business now that you came off of this trip? Does that make, and maybe there's not an answer for it. I didn't have an intention.
Yeah. So I didn't have a specific, I didn't have a specific list of how I wanted to be better when I went into it. Right. And I didn't have a specific list of how I had become better or how I wanted to stay better when I got back. Okay. But what I did discover along the way, and again, it was partly the writing of the book, the developing a presentation around it, was the value of being totally myself and being willing to be vulnerable, and knowing that not everybody's going to like that, right? And I think that's one of the reasons why people are afraid to be themselves, is they don't want to turn some people off. But in my mind, those aren't the people that I need to care about how they feel. In other words, like I'm not the best fit to do business for everyone. No loan officer is the best fit for every borrower.
Right.
And so by being authentically yourself, the goal is that you're actually attracting to you the people that resonate with you the most. And don't worry about the people that don't care for who you are, because why would you want to build a relationship with them anyway? It's just going to be a struggle.
True. Yeah.
And chances are they're not going to reach out to you anyhow.
Yeah.
They're not going to call you up just to tell you how upset they are.
Correct.
They're going to brood on their side of the screen.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm going to end with this. And Blaine, thank you so much. Always
You're so welcome.
Such a pleasure seeing you. And we'd love to have you back on again to continue conversations, and we definitely will talk about our Mortgage Influencers boot camp in Denver. But I love the chapter. It's day 23. It says Santiago is not the end. And I love that this was not the end for you, but in fact became the beginning. Mm-hmm. And so I think that's very powerful, and I truly appreciate that. So we had a couple of people, some people raised their hands, but then they just hopped off the call. So I'm not going to be able to bring them online. But our group is originators who are mortgage influencers, want to have an influence and things like that. So what's the one thing that you would tell someone that would be good for them to know in having an influence?
Well, I think your perspective, how you choose to look at what's going on around you, says a lot about a person's ability to be an influencer. I mean, the market, the phrase I heard recently that so resonates with me is that the market doesn't dictate your success, the market dictates your strategy. In other words, we're in this time that for some people is unprecedented, and we can choose to kind of just wait this one out and ride it out and wait to see when things get better, whenever that happens, or we can figure out how to survive and thrive in the conditions that we're in right now. And I think those folks that can have that perspective of how do we work with what we've been given, then have the ability to share those ideas and that perspective with other people and get other people to be thinking more open-mindedly about, the conditions that sometimes feel quite closed, right? So yeah, that would just be a thought that I could leave you with.
I love that. Okay, so if you want to follow Blaine, where can we find your information at? I know you have a podcast. Is it ArchMI?
Yeah, so the podcast is on most of the major platforms: Spotify, Google, Apple Podcasts. You just want to do a search for ArchMI. So it won't come up under my name, it'll come up under Arch. Obviously, if you were to read the book, you'll learn everything and more about me. And yeah, I mean, I don't have a huge social media presence. That's not something I have intentionally devoted time to, although I sometimes think I should. And as I said, the work that I do that's kind of freelance outside of Arch, that's pretty minimal. I honestly don't have the bandwidth to do much of that. And it's always, a careful consideration for me to make sure that I'm not having any type of conflict of interest or stepping on Arch's toes. So really, the work that I do with Arch and the folks that I work with within Arch, the account managers, that's the best way to kind of reach out and learn more.
Perfect. I love it. Well, thanks guys so much. Thank you for joining us.
Blaine.
And
Yeah, Blaine, that was
pleasure.
great.
Yeah.
Thanks, man.
I'll
Good
come
stuff.
back anytime.
oh, absolutely. And make sure and tune in next week. We actually have a very special friend, Michelle, who is a realtor in Fort Lauderdale, who has been doing a ton on social media. So she's going to be joining us next week. And then the following week on February 22nd, I have a guest, Marshall Sparkman, and we have written a book, the VA Video Planner, and we're going to be doing launch day on that day.
Ooh.
Nice.
So you guys
Fancy.
make it a great week, and we'll see you all next week. Thanks so
See
much.
y'all later. Thanks,
Thank
Blaine.
y'all.
Adios, guys.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.